$82,000 cushion in the reserves just with that alone. The additional variance of $1,210,740 would come from a proposed 1.25 mil increase in the town's mill rate. For the average homeowner in town, that'd probably add something close to $425 to their annual tax.
250 on the average assessment.
What's your average assessment then?
235, I think, is the average assessment.
I think that's correct on that number. I think the number may be higher for other people, but I'll accept that number from you. With year-end returns to reserve, fund reserve to fund balance, we should be in a position of being at least $250,000 over the 15%. Is that about right?
That's about right, yeah.
About $250,000 over the 15% reserve number that we need to maintain our bonding. So we do, with that 1.25 mil increase, have sufficient reserves so that if we have emergencies, we have a need for additional funding for the town, what have you, we have some room to play with. We do have somewhat of a problem selling a 1.25 mil increase. I don't think we've had one of those in the past. So those of us who are vested with the town budget need to do whatever selling they can do to try to get this mill rate passed. One of the things that we on the Board of Finance would like not to do, and that is to delay setting. We want to publish the fact that this budget is based on a 1.25 mil increase, so that nobody is misled, nobody is under any misunderstanding whatsoever as to what lies in front of us. But we want to wait to set the final mill rate until June, probably 17th or so, sometime in the third week of June, when we really have a better handle on what, if anything, we're going to get from the state by way of additional funding. That way we get a second look at the mill rate. But I don't want to mislead anybody in the town. This budget is based on a 1.25 mil increase, okay? The state is sitting on bags of money. I mean, there's no question about it. They have $5 to $6 billion worth of of cash that they're sitting on, and I mean, it's not reasonable for us in the town. We don't have anybody that we can turn and look to and say, oh, well, you take care of this problem, you know. We have to turn to ourselves and say, whatever shortfall there is, we've got to make it up. And this year is going to be interesting and tough to see if the folks in town accept this. Next year may be worse. It may be tougher. There's no guarantee that next year is just going to be a cakewalk. It may be even harder with the cuts that are coming on high from the federal government. And Lamont's, I think, is sitting on these bags of cash, wondering how it's going to affect state operations. And we sit there at the bottom of the totem pole, really not having any solid financial information to go on. So we're going to take every opportunity we can to delay setting the final mill rate until the third week in June. But our budget is based on a 1.25 mil increase. The last thing that I want to say about the budget is that I would like I can't in any way force you or demand that you do this, but I can ask you to do this, and that is for those of you who are involved in budgets and operations and finance in the town to attempt to return to the town fund balance amounts that are outside of your budgets. In that way, we can build a little bit more into the reserve fund if you will do that in good faith. And I ask every one of you to help us in that regard, rather than try to use monies that are in excess. I don't want you to shortchange your programs. I don't want you to cut staff. I don't want you to do anything weird. But I do want you to act in good faith, if you would please, to return amounts that are over budget. Remember that the budget is an estimate, and we have good people doing these estimates, and I know you do them very conscientiously, but they are estimates. So if you go over, please return that to the fund balance. The mill rate isn't an estimate. It's real. And that's real dollars that the citizens are putting out in the form of additional tax. So with that said, I would like to entertain, if I could, a motion to accept the budget as stated with proposed expenditures of $41,816,120 and with proposed revenues of $39,437,525 and Brian, you could help me with the math here, with the 1.25 mil tax increase of $1,210,740 and the use of fund balance of $1,167,855. Is that right?
That's correct.
So moved. Second. At this point, members of the Board of Finance have...
Yeah, so I guess my only concern is if we're expecting potentially a $250,000 variance that would be put into the reserve, we would have nowhere near that 1.2 to add next year.
That's correct.
From the reserve fund, so we could be in for quite the clobbering.
Yeah, I mean, next year you have no fund balance to rely on. Any increase would have to be a taxation. The flip side to that is next year reval will be implemented, so we're relying on the fact that homes in town currently are grossly underassessed, and by leveling the playing field, we feel that we won't have to do anything further to meet our revenue needs next year.
Nothing dramatic anyway.
Yep.
Okay, because that is a concern. Having been on varying sides of the tables here, I know that there's a temptation to not give back.
Yep.
Anything we can get back to help the reserve would be really helpful.
But the picture's clearer because next year is the second year of the biennium.
Right.
So the roll of the dice is less dramatic as it is this year.
And we know of a few things like health insurance next year is flat. So we already know that we're not going to see increases in some of the bigger drivers in this year's budget. And the health insurance went up 10%. But we know that with the fiscal 27 budget, that won't exist. So any changes in health insurance will only be, new additions or changes in staffing. So there's a lot that I guess you could say we're hedging against in fiscal 27 with knowing that where the revenue picture may lie based on early estimates and what we can already forecast for expenditure growth. Yeah, we actually had this conversation for a couple of hours this week, and that was one of my biggest things too, was to make sure that we didn't get too close to that 15% number, and Joe and Mike both were in agreement that if we're 200,000 or more above it, then we're in a pretty safe position. It puts us about 15.6% of reserves, and we move forward from there. We'll start to build the reserves. I think if we can get in that 16.5 range is probably the sweet spot. We don't need to be in the 18s and 19s, but being too close to 15 is also a scare. So.
Okay.
Brian has worked very hard and with real professionalism in helping us get through this process. I know that, and I'm not trying to detract from the folks at the school department and what they've done, but I wanted to especially commend Brian for the work that he's done. You have a comment?
Yeah, I agree with what you presented. I really thought that both boards gave us good presentations, so I'm happy to see that we're accepting that. We're going to present this increase. My question was, you said waiting until September to set the mill. Does that mean there's flexibility there, or what get votes on is that June?
We want to wait until June, the third week of June, which is the last time at which we can set the mill rate legally.
Does that mean it can be less?
Just to make sure that we are real with our funding from the state, that we really understand what we're getting and not getting, okay?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, we put estimates in, and if something comes in higher than we estimated, then we would not tax it to 1 1/4. We would adjust our revenue budget accordingly. So yeah, we would hold off basically as long as we can until we have to set the mill rate to get bills out in a proper time. But the idea was that we won't go higher than 1 1/4, but we might be able to reduce it depending on where state aid comes in at.
We'd like the people in the town to know that we don't pick this 1.25 number lightly. This is after a lot of back and forth and trying to understand how we could do things differently and so on and so forth. And we want people to know that we're concerned about it.
I think the last time that the mill rate went up more than a mill, I think, was 2012. So it's been a good run, but times are changing.
So I do want to address that, and those of you in the audience who have access to advocacy groups that can help get this budget approved, we've never done a budget with this large of a mill increase. There's two factors driving that. Unfunded mandates, as the chairman said, from the legislature, to several $1 million right off the top of our budget. $6 billion in reserves in the state of Connecticut, and the uncertainty of what's happening with the Trump administration. Those drivers have frozen everything. And we need to get this thing passed, because the consequences of not passing is directly going to impact you. We're going to plow the roads. How we educate our citizens could dramatically change. And you need to advocate strongly with your groups to get this passed. It's unprecedented in this town. We've used every trick and every piece of reserve we have to get this budget through. So I would encourage you to accept it and move us forward, please. Thank you.
Thanks. Any further comment from the members of the board? Any further comments? Yes.
I've got a few things I'll say. First of all, with regards to the 1.25 mill increase, knowing what I do know, we're working with our Board of our Finance Department, the difficulties you face as a Board of Finance, I respect the 1.25 mill increase. But I think one key element is one that Joe just referred to, which is the unfunded mandates that the state has given us. And I think you need to explain to the public through some kind of communication what we're starting with and the hole that we're starting from, it's about $1 million of revenue, which is a mill, by the way. And I think you need to make sure that the public understands that so that they know that neither the schools nor the town are spending more money than they need to, and we're all cutting corners trying to meet our budgets.
I wanted, if I can just comment, Tim, the budget that we've talked about also includes the statement that Joe is going to prepare on behalf of the board and submit to the Board of Finance, where we try to outline exactly what you've just said for the people in Somers, so that they understand what budget constraints have been put on us by the state, federal government, and that we're doing the best to try to deal with those things.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Right. I just like to mention that first of all, Somers has an aging population with fixed incomes, and I've been getting calls from people that are concerned about mill increase. And the Board of Selectmen would like to address this by looking at the possibility of adjusting the tax relief that's available for low-income personnel. And currently, there's a chart where it's limited to $55,000. If you make more than $55,000, you don't qualify as income for homeowners tax relief. Also, it makes a distinction between married and unmarried with regards to what kind of tax credit you can gain. So what I'd like to propose, and I'm going to do this with Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, but I want to let us know about it and the public know about it, is that we'd like to, first of all, eliminate the difference between whether you're married or unmarried as far as what the tax credit is. So in other words, the unmarried folks would get the same tax credits that the married folks would. We just get rid of that distinction between the two. And also increase the maximum amount that you can make and qualify for some kind of tax benefit from $55,000, which it currently is, to $70,000. And we'll come up with, Brian, I'll talk to Brian about this. We're going to come up with what kind of impact that might have and what it might cost the town. But I think it's important for the public to know, particularly those with fixed incomes and those who are elderly that own homes, that want to keep their homes, that we're going to try to do something to help those at the lower end of the income spectrum. And that's one thing I wanted to mention. Plus, another thing I just wanted to make note of, and I passed out to you information about the town's budget. Now, we're very conscientious in putting together the town's budget. Brian and Mike do a great job of putting this together, working with the various division, town departments. But what I wanted to say was that the town started off, and I passed this out to you, started off with $9,482,158 in its budget. This is after these are collecting all the budgets that the departments have put together after they've been rigorously dealt with by Brian and Mike. Well, we reduced that, the Board of Selectmen did, by $122,360. We did that because we knew that this is a tough budget year, and we wanted to present what we thought was sort of a bare bones budget. And then we're being asked to come up with another $70,000 on top of that, which brings down our total increase. We started at 6.06% to 3.91%. I'm just raising this to say that we think as a town, we did the right thing budget-wise, but the concern is the sort of lack of incentive to put together a solid budget like that, because we're just being asked by the Board of Finance to. We need more money. You gave us that. We want more, and by the way, schools have a budget of $30 million. They're not presenting anything. So it's just a little bit offensive, at least to me it is. Having a fairly strong background in budgeting, that this is what you end up with. But I understand what you're doing, and I'll definitely accept that. But one of the things that we did have to eliminate from the budget was a pay for performance fund that we could use to recognize those that work above and beyond what their job requires. And this is something that, of course, the town has worked on for over a year. We put it into place last year. We took out any monies that we had for that this year. We just spent, and we can't afford it. But I would like to be able to consider that sometime down the road.
And for the record, you know that we've talked about having you come back after we get this budget in place, and if you need additional funds for something, that you take a good, sound look at it and deal with it at that time.
Thank you.
And I appreciate your comments.
Any
We
questions?
don't want to lose people because we're underpaying.
That's another thing. That's something I want to mention.
Once we know the final numbers, and you know the state system, they don't give us the final numbers until our budget's passed. So you know that
That's
process.
the problem. Yeah.
It's a huge problem.
You have to gamble.
But if you need help, please ask, because we don't want to lose
Yeah,
qualified
and
professionals.
one other thing I want to mention was the town employees are not unionized. Towns of Ellington, East Windsor, Tolland are unionized. And I've talked to their first selectmen. I know the difficulties they have because of the negotiations with the unions. And we don't want to go there. And the problem is we're not giving the town employees what they really deserve. And that's my concern. Yeah.
Well-
But I know they got good benefits, and we're trying to work with them. But this is a work in progress, and we'll be back. And I appreciate your acknowledgement that this is something that's important.
We need your leadership on that, and come back to us and talk to us about it. Let us get this budget behind us, and let us get out to the townspeople and let them know what's going on. And if you need help, just let us know.
Right. Thank you.
All right. Is there any further discussion?
That's a dumb question, but say is it possible to shift from Board of Ed to the town?
No.
Without a town meeting?
No,
It isn't.
they are two separate budgets.
Leave it alone.
With
Yeah, by law, yeah, you
With
can't.
the reserves of 250,000, if we need to do something, we've got the rubber.
But don't we need the whole town to agree to it?
But chances are, in the past,
the dog in the town meeting.
yeah,
And we all get to vote. I think we'll be all right. I hope.
everybody who's here tonight will vote.
Are you all town residents, I hope?
Okay.
Take care of your fellow employees.
Make sure everybody in town gets a fair shake. You know, I'm talking about the employees and the people who work for the town, okay? Yes, Stan?
Thank you and good evening. The first statement that I have is same team. So I heard what you said loud and clear, and I appreciate the hard work that's gone into supporting the Board of Ed. I do want the Board of Finance to know and the public to know before we even came to the Board of Finance that we reduced our budget by $358,000. We reduced 5.1 positions without filling them. And I did hear about, what our position could possibly be at the end of the year in regard to supporting the fund balance. So I wanted to let you know that I'm listening, I hear it, I do appreciate all of the hard work that the Board of Finance has put forth, and we are operating in the spirit of same team.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, no, we've definitely had great past 2 years of budgets between the town and the board side. I mean, Sam and I and Stephanie, we meet very often. We brainstorm, we collaborate. There's a lot of work that goes into these that I don't think everybody really sees. It's more than these 30 and 60-minute meetings that we have on it. There's countless hours on the phones on Fridays and Saturdays talking about the budget and ways we can come up with. So Yeah, no, I appreciate the same team. You don't get that in every town, that's for sure, so.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. Is there any further comment?
I'm just a little concerned about eliminating incentives for the employees. I mean, what is a $70,000 impact
$70,000 impact to what?
to the mill?
I mean, you could,
Minimus, isn't it?
you could extend the fund balance, but $70,000, you're gonna make it 1.265 instead of 125. It's not gonna be a drastic change to the mill itself, but, it's the unknown, really.
Well, we have a motion on the floor. I'd like to address the motion if
I know, but I just wonder if there's any way we could revise it. I don't want to see.
we don't want to revise it now. We'll revise it afterwards, okay? If that becomes necessary, we'll deal with it afterwards,
And we
okay?
can deal with it between now and the end of the fiscal year, if necessary.
Right, with current reserves that
We
you
have current
may
reserves
not,
that we
you know,
could use.
instead of returning them, you would appropriate them in the current year.
I just don't want to hamper the downside. I think it's as important.
All we need is a request from Tim to know what needs to be done, and we can address it.
Don't be shy.
Don't worry about that.
I've not known Tim to be shy.
Okay, I'd like to call the question. All in favor of the budget as recited?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The budget passes. Thank you all very much for all of your efforts. Thank you, Stephanie, Sam, Tim,
Yeah.
Brian, very much so. Thank you.
Public hearing on April 22nd. I want to see all of these faces there
I'll
because I
send
think
out
the
email.
last time we had 6. So let's get 30 at that. That'd be a goal this year.
22nd.
April 22nd.
So that replaces our normal meeting?
What?
Yes.
We have, before we
There'll be a regular meeting after.
before we entertain a motion to adjourn from Mr. Palisano, I think we have the minutes
Yep.
from
Second.
March 11th. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now, Joe, it's your
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion is carried without question. All right. Thank you, everybody.